Hello again, class, and welcome again to Miss Bullock's Flipped Classroom. So today our work is going to be on Week 10 SAT and ACT vocabulary words. So let's go ahead and find out what our I can statements are for the day. I can learn about my new vocabulary. I can also, and these are the things that of course you'll do at home, study to be ready for the game on Monday, study for my quiz, and of course get 100 on my vocab quiz as long as I study well enough. So let's go ahead and move forward to our vocabulary words for this week. Our first word is superficial. Superficial means something that is not deep. It is shallow. So, some of the characteristics of something that would be superficial would be it's not deep and it's on the surface. An example of this from my life, and remember, you're also writing down examples from your life, would be Wilbur. He's not a real deep thinker. It's kind of what's going on just outside and that kind of thing. Nothing much going on underneath that big skull of his. Also, small talk. Things like when you're talking about the weather, or hi, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. It's not deep conversation. But a non-example of superficial, a thing that is deep conversation, would be something like a conversation about my feelings. Now, if we're conversing about my feelings, then I really am getting deep in about me. Our next word for the week is superfluous. Superfluous. I know, it's a hard one. Now, superfluous means extra. With superfluous, we're going to have more than what we actually need. So, an example of superfluous would be too much of something or too many of some things. $1 million, that's probably superfluous. I think I could probably live for less than $1 million. But some non-examples of superfluous, places where you don't have enough, would be not having enough or having $0. Living off of $0 would be very difficult indeed. Our next word for the week is suppress. Suppress means to end or stop something. So, it definitely will be finishing something. So, cough syrup is something that suppresses coughs. It stops you from coughing. Also, holding in a sneeze. When y'all do in class, you're suppressing that sneeze. So, some non-examples would be just sneezing out loud. Achoo! And of course, that would not suppress the sneeze at all. Our next word is surreptitious. Surreptitious means to be secret or sneaky. So, if you're being surreptitious, you're not out in the open at all. You're trying to hide it. So, surreptitious, an example from my life, would be when I am trying not to wake up the dogs, when I'm kind of trying to sneak away from them without waking them up. A time in your life would be when some of you, you know who you are, some of you are trying to sneak food in class. That's a time when you're being surreptitious. Now, a time when, or a non-example of surreptitious would be me in class. I'm all over the place. I'm definitely here for you to see me, including when I'm here on the camera. So surely enough, I'm not surreptitious when I'm in class. We do still have more words, don't worry. All right, so our next word for the week is tactful. Tactful means being polite or nice, and it's being polite or nice about something that might be awkward. So, if you think about it, an example of being tactful is saying someone passed away or someone has gone to heaven. Those are nice ways to talk about death. A non-example would be someone kicked the bucket or is pushing up daisies. Those are rude ways of saying that someone has died. Our next word is tenacious. Tenacious means that someone keeps trying and refuses to give up. So this person, someone who is tenacious, would not give up easily. They would keep fighting. An example of this from my life would be Wilbur. Even though Wilbur might want something and he can't get to it, he will figure out a way to finally get to it. And he will not give up until he finally gets what he wants. So he's very tenacious. Murphy, on the other hand, is a non-example. Because Murphy, he doesn't care. If he tries and he can't do it after about 2 tries, he comes and he says, in front of you until you get it for him. He is not tenacious at all. Our next word for the week is transient. Transient means it's temporary. It is not something that lasts long, so it doesn't last long at all. An example of something that's transient would be a headache. Thank goodness they don't last forever, right? They're there for a little while, but eventually they go away. Another thing that would be transient would be holiday workers, people who are hired to work for a company just for a short period of time, usually around the holidays, but they're not expected to be there for forever. Non-examples of transient would be something like losing a limb. If you lose an arm or a leg, then surely enough, that's a permanent condition. It's not going to grow back. Also, permanent workers for companies. If someone is expected to work for a company for a very long time, they are a permanent worker and would not be considered transient. Our next word for the week is venerable. Venerable means it is respectable because it's old. Not necessarily any other reason, but because it's old. So it's definitely something that is old and definitely not something that is new. An example of a couple of things that are old and therefore respectable would be the painting, the Mona Lisa, because that painting is very old, several hundred years old. And then another example would be my grandfather. He is definitely respectable because he's 90 years old. And once you've reached that age, you definitely deserve some respect. Some examples of things that are not venerable, because 1, they are not old, or perhaps 2, they're not, at least in 1, respectable, would be Justin Bieber and One Direction. So, that brings us to our last word. Next to last word. Our next to last word is vindicate. Vindicate means to clear from blame. So, if someone is vindicated, they are found not guilty by a court. Some people who have been found not guilty by a court, either rightly or wrongly, that's for you to decide, would be George Zimmerman and O.J. Simpson. They were both vindicated. However, someone who was not vindicated, that means he was found guilty, would be Tom Robinson from the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Even though he was innocent, he was not vindicated. Last word for the week. Our last word for the week is wary. Wary means alert or watchful. So, if someone is alert or watchful, they're going to be careful, cautious, or worried. So, an example of this would be Murphy. Definitely about garbage trucks in particular. He worries about them, he watches them, he even makes noises and growls at them because he is alert and watchful. Also me, running after dark. If I'm running alone, I'm watchful. I look for what's around me. An example of something that is not at all wary would be Wilbur, of anything. Wilbur is not afraid, he never watches out, he never even thinks about being careful. So he's a non-example of wary. And those are our words for week 10. So please remember to study, and don't forget, we'll have our quiz on Friday. Thank you.